He was once just a boy with a dream, poor, ignored, and heartbroken by the only woman he ever truly loved. She mocked him for chasing a future she couldn't see, left him in the dust to marry power, wealth, status. But what happens when the boy she abandoned becomes the most powerful man in the nation? This isn't just a love story gone wrong. It's a revelation. A story about betrayal, regret, and the quiet strength of a man who refused to let pain define him. Captain Ibrahy Trari didn't seek revenge, he sought purpose. And in doing so, he rose beyond what anyone thought possible. Now, years later, she returns. Tired, broken. She wants forgiveness, maybe more. But will he let the past walk back through the door? Watch this powerful, real-life transformation unfold, from heartbreak to hero, from abandoned to adored, from pain to presidency. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been broken and had to rebuild, this story will stay with you long after the final word. Before the world knew his name, before he became a symbol of hope, a leader in uniform, the Lion of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahy Trari was just another face in the crowd. A quiet young man with fierce eyes and a heart filled with dreams, too big for his surroundings. Back then, no parades followed his footsteps. No chants echoed his name through the streets. All he had was a vision, to serve his country and protect its dignity. By his side at the time was Amina. She was stunning, graceful, sharp-tongued, admired by many. People in the neighborhood whispered about them, the soldier and the beauty. They seemed inseparable. But love, as Ibrahim would learn too soon, is not always loyal to those who need it most. While he spent his days studying, training, preparing for the military academy, Amina wanted more. Not more love, more luxury. She saw Ibrahim not as a rising star, but as a man clinging to dreams too uncertain to gamble her future on. She didn't wait. She didn't even warn him. One morning she was gone. She chose Sharif, wealthy, powerful, revered. Mina had traded a promise for a palace. Ibrahim, he was left with nothing but silence and shame. And worse, she mocked him on the way out. "You want to be a soldier? You can't even afford a taxi." Those words cut deeper than any wound he'd suffer in the field. But here's where the story shifts. Because that pain didn't destroy him. It forged him. He didn't raise his voice. He raised his standard. He didn't retaliate. He rebuilt. This isn't just a story about love lost. It's about a man who was broken and chose, instead of sinking, to rise so high that one day the woman who abandoned him would look up and realize the man she left behind had become a nation's future. Ibrahim entered the military academy not with pride, but with pain in his chest. While other cadets carried backpacks, he carried heartbreak. At night, while they laughed or rested, he sat in silence, haunted by Amina's laughter echoing in his mind, not the joyful kind, but the mocking one. He imagined her draped in silk beside a man who had everything, while he trained in dust, sweat, and shadows. He didn't eat much. He rarely spoke. Instructors saw him as quiet but distant. "This one has fire," they whispered, "but he's hollow inside." And he was, until the letters came. Every week from a remote village far away, his mother wrote to him. No grand words, no political slogans, just love. Pure, simple, and unwavering. "My son, don't forget who you are. God sees everything. What hurts today will prepare you for tomorrow. You are not abandoned, you are being prepared." Those words weren't just comfort. They were lifelines. He read each letter like scripture, folded them with reverence. They didn't erase the pain, but they redirected it. He used the ache in his chest to push harder, run farther, strike stronger. Pain became his fuel. Loss became his compass. While others slept, he trained. While others grumbled, he endured. And slowly his name began to circulate, not because he talked, but because he delivered. Accuracy in shooting, endurance in runs, calm in pressure. Amina had thought she'd left him broken, but what she didn't realize was that some men, when cracked, don't fall apart. They sharpen, and Ibrahy Trari was becoming a blade. One forged not in comfort, but in fire. The kind of fire that would one day illuminate a nation and burn down every memory of those who once doubted him. If the academy had forged him, the battlefield baptized him. Ibrahim was no longer just a cadet with potential. He became a soldier who walked into the fire while others hesitated. The first to enter a village overrun by insurgents, the last to leave when the mission was done. His presence became legend in whispers. If Ibrahim is with you, you come back alive. One operation after another, he built a reputation, not for arrogance, but for relentless action. In a world of orders and hierarchy, he rose not through favor, but through courage. His body bore the proof, a bullet scar on his arm, the limp. He refused to acknowledge the nights he spent awake so others could sleep. And slowly, he became more than a soldier. He became a symbol. In the barracks, the young recruits began to look to him not just for tactics, but for hope. In the streets, citizens started speaking his name with reverence, even before he had any political power. Then came the breaking point. The country, suffocating under corruption and insecurity, cried out for change. Promises meant nothing. Hunger grew louder than speeches, and in the silence that followed the people's frustration, a single name surged to the surface. Ibrahim. He didn't seek power, but when the moment came, he didn't run from it either. He accepted the weight. The revolution began not with fireworks, but with footsteps, with soldiers who believed in him, with people who remembered a boy who had once walked their same dusty roads. And when the old regime fell, it wasn't with rage, but relief. The crowds didn't chant slogans. They sang. They sang the name of the man who had risen from betrayal, through discipline, through blood and dust, and now stood not above them, but with them. Captain Ibrahy Trari, the lion who was once abandoned, now the leader of a nation. Far from the applause and national pride, another story was unraveling in silence. Amina, the woman who once turned her back on a dreamer, was watching her world crumble. After years of living in comfort with Sharif, the man she left Ibrahim, for life had offered her everything she thought she wanted: wealth, status, admiration. But fate is rarely linear, and its reversals are cruel. Sharif fell ill suddenly, and just as quickly as he had risen, he was gone. In a matter of weeks, the empire Sharif built collapsed. Businesses failed, accounts froze, debts emerged. Amina, who had once walked with her chin high and her hands bejeweled, now wandered markets, trying to bargain for rice. Her once envied dresses became reminders of what had been. Desperate to hold on, she remarried, a man who promised her peace but brought only pain. He drank, he shouted, he hit, and Amina, who once mocked dreams, now prayed for escape. 2 of her children died from illnesses she could not afford to treat. Her home grew quiet and cold. The whispers in the neighborhood turned from envy to pity. And in her darkest hour, a single image haunted her more than any other: Ibrahim. Not as the man she left, but the man he had become. The leader, the lion, the one who had loved her when she had nothing. When she learned he was returning to their village, no longer as a dreamer but as a president, something inside her cracked. She dressed modestly, held her surviving children close, and made her way to the celebration. When she saw him, surrounded by joy, embraced by the people, she couldn't breathe. He was taller, stronger, radiant. And when their eyes met, hers, full of regret, his full of resolve, she realized the most painful truth of all: he had already let her go. It was evening when the celebration began to quiet. The drums softened, the dancers rested, the sky turned gold behind the village trees. Captain Ibrahy Trari sat alone beneath a mango tree near his childhood home, his military coat folded beside him, his silhouette bathed in fading light. Around him stood only a few guards, silent and respectful of their leader's space. That was when Amina appeared. She had waited until the crowd dispersed. She walked with slow, hesitant steps, clutching a small bundle to her chest. Her dress, once silken shimmer, now hung loose and faded. Her face was marked by time, fatigue, and silent grief. But her eyes, those still burned with something, regret. She stepped closer. The guards looked at Ibrahim for direction. He gave none, just watched. She fell to her knees. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling. "Don't stop me. I know I don't deserve your time, but I need to speak just once." He didn't stop her. Tears slid down her cheeks. "Ibrahim, I left you when you were nothing. I thought I was choosing a better life. But that life broke me. My children, too, are gone. I had nothing to give them. I watched them suffer. I screamed for help, but no one came. Not even God." She pressed the bundle to the ground before him. Just a cloth, wrapped around old photos. A child's drawing, a cracked medal Ibrahim had once given her. Remnants of what they once were. "I'm not asking you to love me again," she said. "I know you've moved on. I saw the woman by your side. She's everything I wasn't. But I'm asking as a mother, as someone who once meant something to you. Help me. Just help my last child live." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. Ibrahim stood slowly, eyes locked on hers. He reached down and lifted her to her feet. "I don't hate you, Amina," he said. "But I won't forget. What you did shaped who I became. You left me in darkness, but I climbed. You will not return to my life, but I will not let your child suffer, not for your sins." He called to his aide, handed over instructions. "Make sure she has what she needs, but after this, let her go." Amina nodded, tears flowing freely now. She had begged for love. What she received was mercy, and in that she saw just how far he had risen above her past. Days passed. The dust of the celebration had long settled, and Captain Ibrahy Trari had returned to the rhythm of his duties. But in a modest room on the outskirts of the village, Amina sat restless. Though he had shown mercy, though he had given aid, something within her still clawed for one more chance. Not for love, not even for his hand, but for a kind of absolution only he could grant. And so when word spread that Captain Trari was once again in the village, this time on a quieter visit to open his family home to the people, Amina decided this would be her last chance. She dressed plainly, as one would for a funeral, not of a person but of a past. The home was buzzing. Elders conversed in hushed tones. Children ran playfully between chairs. Ibrahim had instructed his guards to allow anyone who wished to enter, and so she walked through the open courtyard unnoticed. She passed by his mother, who glanced at her, without expression. She stepped inside. He was there, seated, reviewing letters brought to him by the local chief. When their eyes met again, there was no surprise on his face, only a quiet patience. He stood, hands behind his back. "Ibrahim," she said, "I know I shouldn't be here, but I can't sleep, not after that night. I need you to hear me again. I need you to understand how much I regret it all. My choices, my pride, the pain I caused. You?" She paused, her voice fragile. "I have nothing left, not even the strength to rebuild. I know you've moved forward. I see it in your eyes. But please, if there's any piece of your heart that can still see the woman I once was, help me find a place to start again." Ibrahim remained silent for a long time. Then he stepped closer. "Amina," he said, "I gave you what I could, not out of love, but out of duty to my own values. What you seek now isn't in me. You must find your redemption on your own." He turned slightly, his voice firmer. "My path is no longer behind me, and you are behind me." She lowered her head. There were no more tears, just the weight of finality. She left the house unnoticed by most except by his mother, who gently watched her go. Amina had come searching for closure. What she found was a closed door and the strength to walk away from it. For the first time in years, she wasn't chasing the past. She was simply walking forward. The seasons turned, and with them, so did the chapters of Ibrahy Trari's life. The dust of the past had finally settled. What remained was not bitterness, but peace. He had become more than a captain, more than a revolutionary. He was now a president, chosen by the people, trusted with their dreams. And yet his greatest transformation was not political. It was personal. On a morning golden with promise in the heart of the city, the country held its breath. The newspapers had whispered about it. The people speculated. But few knew the truth. Captain Ibrahy Trari was getting married, not to a woman of influence, not to a foreign diplomat or business mogul, but to a woman of the people, the one who had stood by him during his lowest days, the one who had no title but gave him strength. She had met him when he was still training, before the medals, before the battles. She had seen him hurt, uncertain, and had chosen to stay. She believed in him before anyone else did. The ceremony was simple. No opulence, no unnecessary spectacle. Just a quiet courtyard, a line of elders, and a sea of genuine smiles. Ibrahim wore a traditional tunic, his bride a modest but radiant white dress. And when he looked at her, there was no grandeur, only gratitude. He took her hand not just as a man in love, but as a man who had learned what love should truly be. Unwavering, honest, and rooted in reality. Guests wept silently as vows were exchanged. Some thought of the long road he'd walked. Others thought of Amina, who had once been part of that road. But in this moment, she no longer held a place in his present. Ibrahim's mother embraced her new daughter with warmth, and the people celebrated not just the union of two hearts, but the completion of a journey. This was not a wedding born out of nostalgia or guilt. It was born of healing, of choice, of clarity. That day, Captain Ibrahy Trari became something even greater than a leader. He became a husband, and with her by his side, he was ready to build not just a nation, but a home. In the quiet hours after the celebration had faded, Captain Ibrahy Trari stood on the balcony of his residence, overlooking the sleeping capital. The city lights twinkled like distant stars, but his gaze was not on them. It was on the horizon, as though searching for what came next. He had won many battles, on the front lines of war, in the corridors of power, within the scars of his own heart. But tonight he wasn't thinking about medals or titles. He was thinking about peace, not the kind found in treaties or political agreements, but the kind found in silence after storms. The kind earned by choosing the right path even when the heart aches for the wrong one. The image of Amina still visited him sometimes, not with pain, but as a reminder of where he came from, of who he used to be. He had forgiven her, but he no longer carried her in his story. He carried something greater, wisdom. Because true leadership, he had come to understand, was not about being followed. It was about knowing when to let go. Of people, of pride, of the past. The next morning, Ibrahim gathered his team. There were schools to build, roads to restore, promises to keep. His country was still healing, just like he had. But he faced the future no longer as a man marked by betrayal. He faced it as a man defined by how he responded to it. And that, in the end, was the real victory. Not the applause of the nation, not the redemption of power, but the quiet triumph of a heart that had every reason to grow cold and chose instead to remain open. Because when you rise from pain, when you choose grace over vengeance, when you walk forward with clarity and courage, you don't just change your life, you change the story itself. You've heard stories of revenge, of comeback, of success against the odds. But Ibrahy Trari's story isn't just one of success. It's one of restraint, of honor, of choosing the higher road when the lower one begged to be walked. She left him in silence. He answered with legacy. He didn't slam the door on her past, he simply walked through it into something bigger. So if you're watching this now and carrying your own pain, if someone left you behind, called you small, made you doubt your worth, remember this: you are not what they said about you. You are what you rise into. And maybe one day they'll come back looking for the person they didn't believe in. But by then you'll be too far ahead to turn around, and that will be your real victory.